Okay, so what we're going to do today then is I am going to go through the assembly process. This will be almost like an answer key for the assembly for Mantech. As I've always said, this is not the only way, it is just simply my way. If you guys have been able to get the assembly done and working properly, that's fine with me. I'm not going to complain. I'm just giving a little bit of a heads up to people that are struggling to get this thing done. So it's going to be a series of small snippet videos going through the assembly process. So let's start. First and foremost, we may have to make sure that the correct templates are being used. So we're going to be using ANSI inches, and it's an assembly, so we need the environment. So this is the file that we need. So we're going to fire it up. Okay. The very first thing that I always do is pretty much save it. So I'm going to save this, and I'm just going to overwrite something that I was playing with right there. So save it. So I'm calling the assembly single throw clamp number 1. So that's you can do that one, or you can just name it the way that you like it. So I'm just going to save it. Yes. Okay, so now we have our assembly ready to go. So the first thing we can do is add our components. We're going to add by inserting components, which is this button right up here. Okay, so the first part that we want to bring in here is we're going to bring in the base. So I'm just going to bring and drag and drop the base. As soon as we drag and drop the base, if you take a look, the part itself is in. We can manipulate it with the manipulator, or we can also pretty much check to see if it's grounded. It is grounded. Grounded means that it's not going to move. Okay, so now we have our first part. Let's zoom out. Incidentally, I am not going to go through the creation of the parts in these videos, simply because of the fact that you guys should be able to create the parts themselves. I went through them. If you are having issues, please email me and I will walk you through it. But for the time being, this is for specifically assemblies. So as soon as we've got that in, we're going to pull in our next couple of parts. So we're going to pull in, to start with, let's see here what we have. We've got the slide guard, we have the slide, we have the input pivot. So let's pull in the input pivot first. So the input pivot is going to be in this area right here. So I'm just going to simply, once again, drag and drop it into place. So there's the input pivot. So the input pivot itself, when we bring it in, is actually transparent on purpose. The reason for that is that it's already ready to actually be inserted. So if I put my cursor, for example, as it is right now, highlight the hole in the side of this input, click on it once, and then select the hole that I want to match it up, click on it, and what it's going to do is it's going to move into that location. Okay, so we're going to now do the same thing on the second side, like that, select that, and in this case it's giving me a conflict. So what it's telling me is that I already have a constraint with that, so I'm just going to hit escape. When I click on the input, as you can see, it's right there. Okay, so now that's right there. Here, I'm just going to use the manipulator, click the ring, and just simply rotate it just so I have a little bit closer to what I want. Click OK and click cancel. Okay, so on this end of it, let's do this. Let's rotate so we can see the bottom of the plate. So I'm going to click on the following. I'm going to click on the assembly, because the assembly now allows me then through this dialog box to pick another assembly constraint that I can work with. So off of the middle button right here, which is the relationship types, we're going to click down and we're going to pick mate. Okay, so mate is located right here. Okay, so it's 2 clicks. The first one is the bottom here. Okay, then we can just rotate this back down, and then we can click this. And what it does is it snaps into place. If you go right mouse button, then it will place itself where it's supposed to be. Okay, let's go back. So now what we want to do is we want to either put in this to the correct orientation. So the correct orientation should come out by, once again, going to Mate, click on, in this case, Axial Alignment. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to select this. And why is it telling me that? So let's take a look. Okay, so let's hit escape. And we'll use the manipulator. We'll select it. We will pick and move it straight to the center here. Okay, so let's rotate it, say negative, in this case, negative 90 degrees. Enter. Okay, hit escape. Let's take a look straight down. Okay, so here's our problem here. We have a part here that is not in line. So I pretty much pulled the wrong part in my case. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so I picked this one. I should have picked this one. Right, no problem again. Again, I can delete whatever part that I want. This is the one that I want actually. And this should line up all the holes. So if I just drag this one and do the exact same thing. So now let's try it. So same thing, as soon as I drag it in, I can select, say, that surface and select that surface. It places it correctly. Excellent. So let's also rotate and go to assembly, and let's pick the mate. So I'm going to select the bottom surface and select the top surface. And what that does is it ensures that that is correctly in place. So just so we can see where everything is, I'm just going to hit escape, and I'm going to use my manipulator. I'm going to select, and come on, where are you? There we go. Okay, so take this, put it right in the center, select the circle, and what that does is it allows me to move it around. So now if I take a look straight down, that looks a little bit closer to what I want. It should line up perfectly. So what that means is I'm just going to do that, click the home symbol. Okay, so now let's click on assembly. So from assembly, I am going to, in this case, pick on the axial alignment. So I'm going to select that axis, and I'm going to select this axis, and it flips right into place. Hit escape, and now I have my first piece put in. Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing with the front. This is the slide guard. Okay, so here's the slide guard. Let's drag and drop that into place. And for the slide guard, the way that I'm going to do it is, once again, I'm going to select the slot on this side and the hole. What it does is it places into that position. Right mouse button, let's rotate it again. Okay, assembly, let's pick mate, select bottom, let's rotate back and select the top, and right mouse button, and what will happen is that now it's jumped to the correct position. Now the reason I want that is because I want to make sure that this is going to fit to that. So let's try the manipulator again. Okay, kill constraint, sorry. Try the manipulator again. Let's put the manipulator, give or take, in the center of the hole right there, because then what I can do is select the ring and it will allow me to rotate. Now the reason I'm doing that is when I click and look at the top, yeah, that looks good. It looks like it's going to be exactly where it's supposed to be. Okay, hit the home symbol, hit escape. Let's rotate this around just like that. And let's see. put the orientation so you can not only see the slot, but you can also see the hole. So now if I click on assembly again, here is my axial alignment once again. So I'm going to select the slot. I don't care where, it can be anywhere. Just make sure that you select the long side of the slot. So it'll pick the center of the slot. Then I'm going to pick the hole itself, just like that, and right mouse button, and now we have those two constrained, just like that. Okay, so I am going to end this video, and then we're going to see how, for the next video, how we actually start putting in the other pieces. Okay, so be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so continuing on, we're going to add the other parts. So the first part that we're going to add here, probably the simplest one, is the slider. So we're going to click on the slider. Let's drag and drop. There's the slider. Transparent, so that means it's ready to accept a constraint. So if I highlight the center of the cylindrical surface, and then the cylindrical surface of the guide itself, it's going to move into place. Let's simply go right mouse button. So now if I click, and I can use my manipulator, I'll pick this arrow, and then just simply drag, and I can position it to where I want, and I'm fine. Okay, so now I've got the slider in. So the slider itself is where it's supposed to be. Let's continue forward. Our next little piece that we're going to put in, let's see what we got. So our next piece is going to actually be probably the hardest one to put in, and that is the Liebherr input. And the way we're going to put the Liebherr input, we're going to use another type of constraint. It's a special constraint. I think I've shown you guys, but I don't think we've had that much practice with it. So it is pretty much the center plane between 2 points. So let's try doing that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag in that. Okay, I'm going to go right mouse button. So at this point in time, what I want to do is I just want to take a look at that part so I can actually figure out how I'm going to put it in. So if you take a look, what I want is I want the lever itself to be directly midway between these two. Now, what I can do is I can put a mate, say, on that surface right here, and then a mate on the opposed surface on there. However, at that point, what I'm going to have to do is give it a certain amount of offset, meaning I'm going to have to move it so it's actually centered. So rather than doing that, I'm going to use a specialized constraint. So let's do this together. So I'm just going to give myself some room, just like that. I'm going to go, first of all, to my assemblies. I'm going to click the down arrow, and I'm going to pick center plane. So that's the one that I want. So how does center plane work? Well, the first step is when I click on it, I have to check here. Okay, so here's the dialog box, and what I want to do is I want to check here. It has to be double. The reason I want double is because you actually have a single and a double pick. We need a double pick. Why? Because what we want to do is we want to select 2 surfaces on the part and 2 surfaces on the destination. And when we select the 2 surfaces on the part, it will give us the midplane. And when we select the 2 surfaces on the destination, it will also give us the midplane. And by doing it that way, it will mate together. So let's try that. So I'm going to make sure that double is on. So always make sure that double is on. And we'll take a look at our options, see what we have, everything as it's supposed to be. Let's click OK. So here's how we go about doing it. First, we select surface 1, we rotate, and we select surface 2, which is right there. So now we have acquired our constraint on the part itself. Now we're going to go and select the destination. So we're going to select that surface and rotate and select this surface. And what will end up happening is, as you can see, that automatically snaps it right smack dab in the middle. Now this helps out enormously because now what we can do, and we'll use the manipulator. So by using the manipulator, like that. We'll just move it in a little bit, just so. Okay, hit escape. So now all we need to do is create an axial constraint between this hole and this hole. So let's go back, do assemblies, click the down arrow. Let's take axial alignment. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you pick first. I'm going to pick this, and then I'm going to pick this. And then right mouse button, and guess what? There is the lever where it's supposed to be. So if we look straight above it, it is right smack dab in the middle where it's supposed to be. Okay, so we are almost there. So first of all, let's move this so it's vertical. Once again, hit escape. I'm going to select that. Make sure that the manipulator is selected. So again, just select it. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So here's the manipulator. Pick the centered ball, drag it, put it right smack dab in the middle of the hole. And then what we can do is we can select the ring, and then it will allow us to move that in the position that we want, just something like that. Okay, so hit escape, so that's fine. We really only have one main part left to put in, and that is the linkage. So the link itself, let's see what we have. This is called a coupler. So here's the coupler. So I'm going to click on the coupler, drag it out. There's the coupler. Right mouse button. Now with the coupler itself, the coupler has to be, once again, centered. Okay, so as always, it gives us a little bit of practice. So we're going to do two things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to place it central. So by placing it central, we're going to simply click on the center plane. And I'm just going to rotate it so I can see it. Remember, it is 4 picks. It is, and with the double here, so we select center first, or the surface first, rotate it. Let's move it over here, select the center here, okay? We can hit the little house symbol, and then we're going to go the same thing. We're going to select that surface, rotate it, and select that surface. And then what ends up happening is that the link, or the coupler, is actually smack dab where it belongs. It is right in the middle of that piece, okay? So our next point is to make sure that this is centered on here. And as I think you've already guessed it, it's going to be another axial alignment. So we're going to click on axial alignment. We're going to select that. We're going to select this. Okay. Let's right mouse button. So now we have that there. Okay. So let's just simply move the lever so it isn't going to be jamming here. So let's select, there is the lever, let's put it again approximately at the circle here, like that. Click and then just rotate, click and OK. And then we'll cancel. Oh shoot. Okay. Now it's actually acting up. So let's try this again. Let's hit escape. And rather than trying to rotate it, what we're going to do is we're going to place an angular constraint. Now, why are we going to place an angular constraint? It'll allow us then to move it correctly. So let's do this. So here's another constraint that we're going to learn, or we have learned or played with, and that is angular. So here's angular constraint. So it's 3 picks. Pick number 1, that surface. Pick number 2, that surface. Pick number 3, that surface. Okay, so by doing it that way, we now have our 3 surfaces. We can hit escape. Now, how are we going to place that, or how are we going to change the value? It's very simple. Make sure you hit escape, select the lever, and take a look down here. So down here, here's your angular constraint. So if I click on angular constraint, it gives me this. Okay, so here I'm just going to change it. I'll change it to say, let's say 270 degrees and see what we get. There. Okay, so that's something of what I want. I actually wanted a little more than that. So let's make this, let's add 90 to that, so 360. There, so now it's vertical. So in reality, let's give it simply 290. There, so that's 290, pick, and it's dragging this along, which is exactly what I want. So the last thing we need to do now is we need to make sure that that circle is aligned with this circle. So let's create the last alignment. It's another axial alignment. We're going to select that. We're going to select this. It snaps into place, right mouse button, and now we have our assembly. Okay, so we now have our assembly. So what that means now is that if we select that and we select the angle, we will make this, say, 310 degrees, enter. Or let's make it a little bit more. Let's make it 345 degrees. There we go. And as you can see, it's moving the slider. Okay, so now we have that all set up. Let's stop right about here. And then the last thing we're going to do is pretty much the easiest part, and that's putting the hardware. Okay, so I'll see you in a couple of minutes. All right. So what we're going to do now is we are going to put in the hardware. So the hardware itself is been given to you. There's a few pieces here. It's going to be located in the zip file that I gave to you in Learn. So you should have a hex head, which is 3/4 thick, long. You have another hex head, same size, but it's 1 inch long. You have nut. And you also have a socket head and washer. So we're going to start by putting in the pieces in these two holes right here and also finish off with this. Okay, so the way that we're going to do it, we'll start with the the socket head. Here's the socket head, click, drag, drop, okay? And then drag another one and drop. Might as well have them both in there. Hit escape. Okay, so we could use mate and then axial alignment. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you another, or I'm going to get you to practice another constraint. The reason I want you to practice this one is because it's actually pretty cool. It allows you to do 2 constraints in one shot. So if I click on assembly, here is the relationships. What I want to do is I want to use the insert. Okay, so the insert works as follows. The first thing we're going to select, and I'll just zoom into here. I'm going to select, say, that surface of the socket, and then where is it going to meet? It's going to meet on here. Then I'm going to select the axis, and then I'm going to select the axis here. And what it does is it pops right in there. Pretty cool. Let's do the same thing with the other one. So here's the surface, here's the surface, here's the axis, here's the axis. There. So now I have my 2 socket heads in there. Perfect. Let's put in our bolt. So we're going to put our bolt and our nut. So for this one, we're going to use the hex head 1 inch long, which is right there. Let's drag into it. That's perfect. Okay, right mouse button. And while we're at it, we'll also add our nut. So let's drag the nut in here just like that. Okay, let's hit escape. So we're going to use the insert once again. So with the insert, we are going to go insert. We're going to select that portion of the bolt and that portion of the surface, that axis, and that axis. And then it puts it where it's supposed to be. Perfect. Okay, so then we're going to select that portion of the nut. Let's rotate that portion of the surface. Okay, rotate again. Let's select the axis, which is the cylindrical opening of the nut, and then just the shank of the bolt, just like that, and it will snap into place. So now we have that. Looks good. Okay, so let's work on these ones right here. these ones are as simple, except the only thing is that rather than just 2 bolts, we actually have 2 washers and 2 screws. So let's put in the washers first. So here's the washers. Let's drag one. We'll put one on this side. And then drag one. We'll put one on that side. Okay, no big deal. Okay, so I'm liking this insert tool. So I'm just going to go here. And I'm going to use the insert again. And I'm going to do the following. Surface. And then surface. Axis. And then axis. And it snaps into place. Do it again. Surface, rotate, surface, then axis, and then axis. And it snaps into place. Okay? So we now have our washers there. So now we're going to put in 2 more socket heads. Here are the socket heads. Let's drag. And we'll drag another one in here. No problem. We're having fun with inserts, so let's click on insert. So select the surface. This time you're going to select the top surface of the washer, not the top surface of the guide, just like that. Select the axis and select the axis, and then it snaps into place. Okay? Let's do the same thing here. Select that surface. So we're going to do, okay. I'm just going to go and do the axes through insert. So there's that. Let's rotate the top of the washer, remember. Then the shank and the hole. And there we have it. Escape. Okay. So now we have pretty much everything we need except that we need to put the bolts here. So those bolts are going to be the shorter versions. So we're going to need 2 nuts and two bolts. So here's the shorter version of the hex head. Highlight, drag one, and we'll also drag a nut. Okay, and it doesn't really matter which side the head is going to be. For me, it's not going to matter too much. What I do, however, want you to do is you're going to simply place them into position. Okay, so let's take this one, for example, and I'll just rotate it so it's pointing in the direction that I want, just like that. Okay, so for this particular one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an axial constraint. So let's use the axial constraint. So here's the axial constraint. Select, and then select. It places it where it's supposed to be. That's fine. Enter. Okay, so what we want to do is, let's see what we can use. We can actually use a contact. So let's see if we can use the contact. And the contact means that if I get close to here, it will pick a point. And then if I select the surface that I want to contact, it's, in this case, it's going to go through the entire thing, which is not what I want. Okay, no problem. Hit enter. Okay, so we're just pretty much going to place them into position. Okay, to do that, I want you to hit escape, click on the bolt, and then let's go straight up, click the view cube on top, let's zoom in here, and just pick this arrow, and then just drag approximately where you think it's going to go. So approximately there, that's fine. Okay, hit escape. So let's now put the nut in place. So we're going to place the nut. So we're going to take the axes again. So we're going to go and pick on the axial alignment. We're going to pick the shank of the bolt. That will place it where it's supposed to. Hit enter, or hit escape in this case. So for this one, same thing. We're going to use just simply the manipulator. Let's look straight down. Okay, let's grab this and position it to approximately where we want it. So it's about there. That's fine. So it doesn't have to be exact, so it's good. Okay, so we're going to do the exact same thing here. I'm going to let you do it just to get some practice, but that pretty much shows how the assembly done. So hopefully these 3 videos help. Please review them as many times as you want. That's what they're for. And we'll be talking to you guys soon for the next lesson and the next videos. Okay? Talk to you there. Bye.